right, hello. Welcome to Prospects of Kidkind. I'm Eliza.
And I'm Celia. Today we have two amazing guests. We have Samuel. He's in the 3rd grade. He loves to draw and create animations, play chess, and read. His favorite series are I Survived and Nathan Hale's Hazardous Tales, and of course Star Wars. His academic interest is mostly aligned with math at this point. Yeah, thanks so much for being here. We also have Jean Berko Gleason. She's a professor emerita in the Department of Psychological and Brain Sciences at Boston University. A psycholinguist who has made fundamental contributions to the understanding of language acquisition in children. She's also the creator of the WUG test, by which she demonstrated that even young children possess implicit knowledge of linguistic morphology. Gleason is the author of 125 papers on language development in children. Since 2007, she has delivered the Welcome, Welcome and Goodbye, Goodbye speeches at the Ig Nobel Award ceremonies. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
All right, should we do some fun facts?
Definitely.
Okay, today's fun fact will be, what is your favorite way to eat an egg? For me, it's a soft boiled.
Mine is a poached egg. Very much the same.
I like mine as a normal egg. I just eat it with utensils and fork and knife.
Awesome.
Nice.
And I like to leave the house before anybody eats an egg. And I like to make them promise that they will clean up all remnants before I come back.
Strong egg opponent.
I am anti-egg.
This is very hard for me.
Celia is basically an egg.
I am an egg in the human form.
She is. Okay, so thank you for being here. We're gonna get started. Today's theme is language and words. So our first question is, what are some words you love and what are some words you hate? Do you want to start, Samuel?
Yeah. I like words like drawing because it's like art and I really love art.
Okay.
And I also like basketball because it's also my favorite sport.
So you like words that are things that you enjoy.
Yeah.
What about some words you hate?
The number one thing is hate.
You hate the word hate.
Yeah.
Why?
Because what it means. I don't like
What does hate mean to you?
that you don't like anybody and you're lonely and stuff.
Oh, interesting. What about you? What do you think?
Well, there are words that I hate not because of what they mean, but because of the way they sound.
Yeah.
And they tend to be words like luscious and scrumptious.
Yeah, those are bad.
Don't you hate
The
luscious? Why
That's
would you
good.
ever buy anything that's advertised
Ugh.
as luscious? It's disgusting.
Or scrumptious.
Yeah, scrumptious. I hate words like that.
Oh, wow.
And I hate words like hubby,
Hubby.
hubby, my
That's a bad
hubby.
one.
I think hubby's a bad word. And I hate words that have those ucky sounds to them, basically.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What about words that you love?
By the way, I also hate yummy. If somebody says something is yummy, I'm sure it tastes terrible.
That's funny.
Words I like are words that have P's and K's and T's in them.
Oh, wow.
How do you feel, Samuel, about words like pumpernickel?
Oh.
Do you like the word? You don't have to like the thing.
Like, how does it sound to
It
you?
sounds cool and stuff. The
Same.
pumpernickel part's cool. I like that part.
I like the P. I like plankton.
Plankton.
But they're all really unexpected, right?
I like the explosive P's and K's. I like plankton and kelp and alpaca. Those are all
that is
great
fun.
words, I think.
Wow.
My favorite word to say is in Russian, because I just like the feeling of saying it, мясо, which means meat. But I just like saying мясо.
It means meat.
meat.
I thought you said mean earlier, and
Oh,
I was thinking
meat.
it to be like a psychological thing.
No, it just means meat, and it's just fun to like, try to say мясо.
Miasa.
Мясо.
Yeah.
It feels like fun to say it. And then a word that I think is very difficult to pronounce is consciousness.
Consciousness.
I always like that's a difficult word.
In English. You know what I find hardest in English? The word that's spelled R-U-R-A-L.
Yeah.
rural.
It's not. It's not easy.
That's
It's
hard.
really hard to say rural.
That is hard to say. Cool.
Nice.
Yeah, let's move on to our second question.
Okay. So, Jean Berko Gleason, you've brought some WUG test with you.
Did.
So maybe you can tell us what it is and how it
Sam
works.
brought his WUG shirt with him, and it's a very, very handsome WUG, I will say. The WUG test was devised to find out whether or not young kids, younger than Sam, know how to make plurals and past tenses and inflected verbs of words they've never heard before. In other words, if I say to a child, here's a dog, now there are two of them, there are two, and the kid says two dogs, that doesn't prove the kid knows how to make the plural.
Right.
It only proves the kid knows how to make the plural dogs. And
Or he's heard it or something, yeah.
So what you need to do is make a word you've never heard before. So then you can say, this is a WUG, this is a WUG, and then you can say, now there's another one, there are two of them, there are two
Wogs.
WUGs. Now, if you could fill in WUGs, and you've never heard the word WUG before, it means you know how to make the plural in English. And we were able to show that even very young kids, like 4-year-olds, knew how to make the plural of WUG. They could make that kind of simple plural in English. Shall I show you a couple others?
Please.
Okay. All right, let's see what's coming up here. Oh, this is a verb. This is a man who knows how to gling.
Gling.
Gling. He's glinging. He did the same thing yesterday. What did he do yesterday? Yesterday he
Glinged.
glinged.
Nice.
Okay, now what's so neat about this is that kids all say glinged, and that is the regular past. But because essentially all of the ing words in English are irregular in the past, adults are torn. They don't know if they should say glinged, or if they should say glang, or glung, or
I was
glot,
thinking
or something.
that.
You know, so it's harder. But when we first did it, we asked 80 kids, and 80 out of 80 said glinged.
Oh, wow.
Because that sort of sub-pattern of knowing ring, rang, rung, etc.
Interesting.
Comes later. So that's
Wow.
fun to show.
That is
But they
fascinating.
all said glinged, and of course glinged is fine. So this is a TAS.
A task.
TAS. And now there's another one. There are two of them. There are two.
Tass.
What did you say?
Tass. I forget the name.
TAS. One TAS and then two.
Tass is.
Aha! No, Sam did a great thing there because he was thinking. You couldn't decide if it was just TAS or if it was TAS's, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because kids tend to assume that if a word ends in an S, you don't have to do anything much to it. It's already plural. It already
Yeah.
sounds plural. So it takes a
does.
while before you realize that you have to add that sound to the end of a word. We gave the real word glass, and nobody had a problem with that. Two glasses.
Interesting.
But it takes a while before you realize, well, it's a little more complicated. If it
Yeah.
ends in an S, you can't just add another S. You have to add that to it.
Yeah.
And that takes some thinking.
That's
So
awesome.
that's a much harder one to do.
Yeah.
And when we asked this of young kids, they didn't do it well. They didn't
Yeah.
do it well. Okay,
That's awesome.
I got a couple more, but we could spend the entire time doing these.
Maybe we should move on to the next question.
I'm going to ask you one.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you
Give
two.
us a tricky one.
I'll pass by the tricky ones and I'll show you a couple that you'll like. Okay. Just that they're a little bit different. Maybe only one that you'll like. Okay. This is a very tiny WUG. It's a very tiny WUG. What would you call a very tiny WUG?
A wiglet.
What would you?
A wiggling.
A wiggly? You could. Okay, those are all good. See, in English,
Wiglet? I don't
a
know.
wuglet.
Baby WUG.
You said a baby WUG,
Uh-huh.
and that's what all young kids say.
Oh.
All young kids say baby WUG. And when you get a little bit older, you know all those endings like ling and lung, etc.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Wugling or wugget or things of that
my
sort.
gosh.
I can't show
That
you.
is a cool
I
one.
can't show you more of the WUG test, but we had a good time with it, and we were able to show
Yeah.
that young kids have a very systematic knowledge, internalized knowledge of the language, and they're pretty good at it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So speaking of language, Some of us here speak second languages or third or fourth or multiple languages. So how do you think that happens? And do you speak another language? And do you think another language, or do you dream in another language? And do you think it's an advantage or a disadvantage to speak other languages? A lot of questions there, but what do you think?
Yeah, I used to speak my own, and I think it's an advantage because when you go to that country, then you can communicate with everybody.
And where do they speak that language?
They speak it in South India, and mostly in India.
But so you don't speak it anymore?
Yeah, because in kindergarten I just forgot everything.
You forgot everything?
Yeah.
So you never
I just-
think or
I just
dream or anything?
I just understand words. I don't speak it anymore.
But you understand it. If your mom speaks it to you,
Yeah.
you understand it? So do you think it's an advantage?
Yeah.
Interesting. But did you ever dream in that language?
No.
Really? Interesting.
But maybe you did and then you forgot it.
Yeah.
That's totally possible. Wow, that's so interesting.
What do you think?
Well, I think Stam is right. It is an advantage, and it's an advantage not just because you can get a cup of coffee in South India if you can speak Malayalam. It's because young kids growing up with two languages have cognitive advantages over monolingual kids. They are actually able to tell what a word is earlier. You know, if you're growing up and your only word for dog is dog, then you may think that the word is part of the thing, you know.
Yeah.
It's part of the thing. But if you know dog and you know sobaka and you know shang, you know all these other words, then it's easier for you to understand that the word is a symbol for the thing. So, and there are other advantages, you know, cognitive advantages people have found from knowing two languages. Not, you know, as well as the fact that it makes you a citizen of the world. You can go places
Yep.
and enter into other cultures.
How many languages can you speak?
A couple.
A couple. Do you ever find yourself dreaming in them or thinking in another language?
The only time I ever dreamed in another language was many, many years ago, and it was the night before my Sanskrit final exam.
Oh, wow.
And all night long, I had these Sanskrit words bursting in my head, or just little greetings that my head would say, "Oh, Pandita." For whatever reason, I was just, my brain was overdone with Sanskrit, but otherwise, no, I tend to.
Interesting.
Yeah.
If I talk to my parents for too long in Russian, sometimes I have dreams in Russian. And then when I was in France, because everyone was speaking French the whole time, I began to also kind of think in French. And I was like so amazed by the cognitive difference of actually thinking in another language is just insane. Yeah. When you just look at things differently.
What I think people in this country don't realize is that the major portion of the world's populace is bilingual at least. See, Americans tend to be so monolingual, and they think it's bad for you to, you know, you'll get confused. You know, you're not confused if you know two languages, even if you mix them up when speaking because you're doing it on purpose. A lot of people do what's called code switching. You know, they'll actually drop the other word in from the other language to be funny, or because it's more apt, or because they're being friendly. But their brain isn't having a problem.
No.
Their brains are good. Bilingualism, good.
Definitely.
It is.
Even when I started to learn French, you know, when I was in middle school, I started writing poems in French. I started only thinking in French, and it was just, you know, from one class. Sometimes just you feel more connected to a language.
Well, you feel more connected to a whole different way of seeing the world.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
It isn't just that it's a different language. The language embodies a different culture, and when you speak that language, you get more into that culture. You get to see things the way another kind of people see.
Definitely.
Which is important. Yeah.
It's good for you.
Very good point. Okay.
It makes you not be an ugly American.
Okay. Are there gender differences in language? Differences with both boys and girls' languages, and how about the way that we speak to boys and girls? How is that different? What do you think?
I think they use like teachers, for example, they just use different tone to boys and girls sometimes.
What's the different tone?
Like they still speak like happy and stuff, but they like have an accent and stuff like that.
When they're talking to which gender?
It matters about if it's a boy or a girl.
So are they softer to one, or who do they give the accent to?
Sometimes for me, because I'm a boy, they use sometimes like a medium, and for girl, it's like soft.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's a reason for that?
I don't know yet. I'm trying to find out. Because
Interesting.
they do it all the time, every day.
Wow. That's crazy.
Well, there's been some research in schools
Yeah.
which has shown that teachers do speak differently to boys and girls, and people are able to change the things that they're aware of. So if somebody goes into the school and says, all right, from now on, please don't keep saying, I want some big, strong boys to help me move this. You know, so people learn that and they don't do it. But there are some much more subtle things we do in talking to boys and girls that, since people are not aware of, they can't change. And this begins when people are babies. So that we've done some research, and other people have done research that shows that people have different notions about what their babies are like. This was a woman named Zella Lurie at Tufts, did a study many years ago. She had people who had newborn babies, and they interviewed them about the babies. And the babies were the same. They were the same size, they were the same weight, they had the same APGAR scores, but what they were boys and girls. The parents of the boys thought they had tough little bouncy guys, and the parents of the girls thought they had delicate little pretty girls. And they speak to them that way. So we've done some research that's shown that people talking to even little boys tend to call them by funny names. You know, okay, wise guy. Yeah, people don't say, okay, wise guy to their little girl. They say, come on, princess. You know, they speak to them in a gentler way. And when people are telling little boys not to do things, they're much rougher on them. They say things to them like, no, 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 no. And to little girls, I'm generalizing, so I don't mean that everybody does this, but I mean, if you do a study, you will find more people doing this and more people doing that. So to little girls, they're more likely to say things like, sweetie, we don't want to put that in our mouth. Rather than no, 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 no. So there are a number of things like that.
What do you think are the long-term effects of that?
Well, the long-term effects really are people are much nicer to girls than they are to boys. They really are. People are much mean. Have you noticed that people are meaner to boys than to girls?
Yeah, I saw it like every time at gym. I know that because sometimes if you don't follow something, and then they just like yell at the boys to just sit on the bench. But when a girl does it, they just go on the bench.
Yeah. So they assume that boys are tougher. And, you know, boys are human beings with feelings. So they hurt the feelings of a lot of boys, and I think they make a lot of boys angry. I think a lot of little boys are treated in such an unpleasant way that it makes them angry, and that may account for some of the anger we see down the line, because I think there are differences in road rage, you know, things of that sort. So there's let me name one other difference we've seen. We did a study on the use of diminutives, you know, like when you say blankie and jammy and footy and all of that. And we found that parents use many more of those diminutives, which carry affection. They use many more to little girls, and they use them to a broader range of things. They were saying to their kids, let's go uppy to Betty and put your jammies on and go sleepy. You know, things like that to little girls. And Laura, come on, buddy, it's time for bed. An entirely different kind of tone. So we found them using more of these diminutives to little girls for a longer time in their lives. By the time the little boys were a little over 2, people dropped it out, but the girls, they were still doing it to a much broader range of reference.
Wow.
So people are just they're assuming that little girls are gentler and should be treated in a gentler way. So as I say, they're nicer to them.
I had a slight epiphany about this recently. So I work with basically all males in my lab. And I thought recently that they were all just being kind of mean all the time. And I just didn't like how they were kind of talking to me, and I was complaining to someone, and they were like, well, it seems like they're treating you as an equal, and they're not being soft to you, and you're probably not used to it.
Yeah.
And at first, I think it's very interesting, because that they probably are talking to me the way they talk to each other, and maybe I'm just really not used to it.
Well, with adult language, in the first place, the whole thing about men are from Mars and women are from Venus, that is ridiculous, okay? The differences in language are very, very slight. But where you do see differences between men's and women's language is in all male groups and in all female groups, okay? So that, I mean, if surgeons don't, a female surgeon doesn't say, sweetie, can I have the scalpel? And the male surgeon doesn't say, come on, buddy, give me the scalpel. They speak like surgeons, okay?
Yeah.
But when guys are sitting in the bar talking about sports, and when women are, I know women go to the bar and talk about sports. I'm talking about stereotypic behaviors, when men are in all male groups doing all male things, and when women are in all female groups doing, quilting or something, that's where you'll see the most differences. But when they have the same thing that they're doing, then the differences are very slight.
Right.
But so if this may be one of the problems with the gaming culture and the computer culture, is that it's been all male groups, and they have that all male way of talking, and suddenly they're talking to you like another gamer, or if they hate you, they're doing terrible things to you. So.
Maybe we should just open it up to our phone lines if someone wants to call in and ask any questions. And that's our number, so give us a call if you have any questions for our incredible guests. And maybe you guys, Sam, do you have any questions for Jean?
What's your favorite language and why?
My favorite language is Sanskrit, and I like it because it's very complex. It has 8 or 9 cases. It has nominative, accusative, instrumental, dative, ablative, locative, and vocative cases. I may have left one out. You have a set, you always miss one, but that's a good number. And it has singular, dual, and plural.
Wow.
Isn't that fun?
That's a lot.
Wild.
And it's a great language because if you take Sanskrit, then you get a picture of ancient India. When I took it, we read parts of the Mahabharata, and it was just a wonderful experience.
Wow. It must be very difficult to learn.
It's not that hard.
Oh, we have our first caller.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Hi, I wanted to say that my favorite word was the word, used to be the word plush, because it has like 11 different meanings that are very different, like flushing cars, or like someone who's flushed is all red. And also words that, or phrases that mean the opposite of themselves, like suspension of disbelief. Like suspension means to stop something, but it's also something to be suspended, like held up. I don't know if there are any comments about that, like about words like that.
Okay.
What do you guys
Awesome.
think?
Thank you for your
calling.
question.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's
Yeah, great show, by the way, great show.
Thank you.
I think that's an evidence of liking sort of the cognitive characteristics of the word. Sam likes the meaning, and this gentleman likes the polysemous factors, the fact that it's so variable and you can do so many things with it. So, and I like the sound. So we all have a different reason for liking. So those are great, I think.
Yeah.
I remembered a word I like, chrysanthemum. That's
That's a
like my
great
sister's
one.
favorite word.
It's a good word, but I like the P's and K's.
What was that?
It was like that book thing with the mouse.
Yep, the mouse.
Which one?
I know exactly what you're talking
what?
about.
It was this mouse named Chrysanthemum.
Oh,
It's a very popular kids book. I remember loving it.
and the mouse's name is Chrysanthemum?
Uh-huh.
That's
Yeah,
cute.
that's so nice. I'm glad you've read that. Really enjoyed that.
What was the first word they said? Plush?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. 11 different meanings for plush.
For plush or
Yeah,
flush?
I think
Flush? Oh, maybe they said
Oh.
flush. Oh, like red. It makes more sense now. They said flush. Oh, and like
Hard to make out the phonemes.
I know. That makes more sense.
Oh.
Oh, another call. Hello.
Hello.
Hello?
Hi.
Hello, you handsome boy, you. Hello, you handsome boy.
Somebody's calling you a handsome boy.
Oh,
It
yeah.
can only be you.
Do you know you're sitting with Charlie's Angels?
We're sitting with a white shirt. And
They're all pretty girls.
Thank you. And a handsome boy.
And he's so handsome.
Yeah.
I can hug him all day.
Do you have a question for the handsome boy by any chance? No?
No, I don't, honey.
Oh,
That's okay. Well,
thank you
thank
for
you so
calling.
much for
What are
calling.
you talking about anyway?
Words? Do you have a favorite word?
Do I have a favorite word?
Yeah, what's your favorite word?
I have a favorite name.
What's your favorite name?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Jesus.
Papa.
That's a good name.
That's a good name. Good name. Well, thank you so much for calling.
Thank you.
You too, Charlie's Angels.
Bye.
Oh gosh. We have 28 seconds left.
28
so
seconds.
Here we are.
I was wondering if you could give us your signature goodbye, goodbye.
Well, I have to cry. You know what? When I say the welcome, welcome, I always do it very happily. So it's welcome. But when I leave, I sometimes bring along a big doily. You never saw me come with a long doily to wipe my eyes.
Oh.
You want me to say goodbye?
Yeah, we have 4 seconds.
Okay, goodbye. Goodbye.